Welcome to Mysterious Goings On. We're going to get right to the show after these messages.
You know, it's the 12th month of the year, although it probably seems like the 120th month of 2020, but be of good cheer. It is the end of the year, and is our wont on Mysterious Goings On. I like to wrap up the year in pop culture and life, the universe, and everything with my very good friend, the author, Jason McIntyre. He is the #1 Kindle Suspense author of The Nightwalk Men, bestsellers On the Gathering Storm and Shed, plus the multi-layered literary suspense, THALO Blue. He's got a great book of short fiction that's out recently, and we cannot mention all this without talking about the Herculean effort and incredible read that is the Dovetail Cove series. My gosh, I lost count how many great books are in there. It was like 10, I think, or there may be more. He's going to kick me under the table, so to speak, if I got that wrong. So we'll find out. Without further ado, my very good friend from the North, Jason McIntyre, welcome back to Mysterious Goings On.
Thank you so much. Great to be here again. It seems like just yesterday we were recapping 2019, and it was a lot easier, I think, than trying to recap 2020. What a crazy, madness-filled year in many ways for you and I, and for the countries at large.
Definitely. Let me ask you before we get too deep into everybody else. Kill the Lights is out. Great book, anthology book. That's fairly newish, isn't it?
Yep. That came out late 2019, and it was kind of an experiment. I added novellas to it periodically throughout a year and a half. So folks who got in on the ground floor, they paid 99 cents and they got the first short novel. And then a couple months later, without the price increase, the price did increase a little bit each time. But if you got in on the ground floor, you got that second story and all the subsequent short novels for free. You just had to re-download it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You just refresh it, the download. Yeah, you can do that, which I need to do. Dovetail Cove. Where are we with Dovetail Cove? If you don't mind, just give us a little Cliff's Notes on what it is and where we are with it.
We are nearing the end. There's 9 novels and short novels that are out. They go in order just by name and number only. You can read them in any order and it'll all make sense. But they each cover a story or a tale around certain characters that happen during 1 year, from 1971 through to 1971 through 1980. And the 10th book is a monster, and it's been delayed for numerous life reasons. But my hope is to get it finally finished and out in 2021. And when I say it's a monster, it's a monster. It's the longest, most involved, and maybe the best thing I've ever written, to be honest. But it was so complex because it pulled from an entire decade of stories. Not only a decade for me to write them, but a decade of actual narrative space. So yeah, hopefully we can look forward to that one. If the world doesn't blow up in 2021.
Listeners, we got to pray it doesn't blow up, because you're going to want to read this. I have read everything here, and there's a kind of a fun conceit to the titles. You have deathbed, bled, fled, redhead, zed, unwed, shed, dread, instead. You have all these things. So I'm wondering, well, maybe I might have an idea, but I'm wondering what this final chapter, so to speak, will be titled. I think I know, but I'm not going to say, of course, because somebody would jump through the screen at me if I did that. Folks, you've got to check it out. This holiday season, it's not too late. Get them all in ebook. It's fine. Give them as a gift. But if you are stuck at home, and we're all probably going to be stuck at home at various times throughout spring as we await vaccines and et cetera, why not visit Dovetail Cove? I'm not just saying this because he's my friend. I'm saying this because it's true. It's some of the finest fiction I've ever read in my life. And I want you to please consider checking it out. And again, Jason, who has got the vapors, because he's blushing.
I'm blushing.
And again, you said this previously. It's because you can kind of start anywhere. But if somebody were to start what's the most logical one you'd have them start on? Out of
Yeah, start at the first one. It's called Deathbed. It would be the place to start. And honestly, it was the last book of them that I wrote, which is weird. I wrote them all completely out of order. I wrote 1977 first, and then I went back and wrote 1972, and then I think 78, then 75, then 73, then 74, and then 71, if I recall correctly, which is a weird way to do it, but it's kind of how they occurred to me.
Right.
And the connective tissue was kind of already there in my mind. And I got to tell you, once you get to the end of writing something that involved, at least for me, it's like a whole section of your brain is freed up because it's been dwelling on it it took me close to 10 years between when I started the first one. Actually, it was longer than that. I wrote the first one many, many years before I wrote the rest of them. So, but yeah, if readers want to jump on, start at the one called Deathbed. It surprised me that readers really latched on to that story, mostly because of the main character. I think she's a delightful girl, kind of based on my own daughter. So I think that's probably why. So yeah, start there.
And you'll find, folks, that the Dovetail Cove books dovetail. It's, if you are like me, and one of the things I think Jason and I both respect about, let's say, Stephen King, his Castle Rock, there's cameo. Like, you're going to find a character in Zed who's going to cameo in, I think, in Red Hat, but that you get the point. And I love those little, and I know you didn't write it to be gimmicky. You just did it to fill out the whole holistic world you created. But for me, it's like, I love these Easter eggs. It's like, and there's even a kind, I won't even say more than this, there, if you've read my stuff and you read Jason's stuff, you might be pleasantly surprised. That's all I'm going to say about something.
Mm-hmm.
If you know both of our worlds. I'm getting effusive and excited about it. I could spend the whole hour talking about this, but folks, here's the deal. Look in the show notes. There's going to be a link to Jason's website, thefarthestreaches.com. There's a link there. And also I'll put a link where you can directly go buy it at the various places, which would be Amazon, I suppose, would be the main one. And we'll go from there. So Jason, again, thank you for your work, because it makes life easier for the rest of us.
What a nice thing to say.
That's true. It's a great escape. And I would be remiss if I didn't remind everybody that Kill the Lights is a fine anthology of fiction. It's very, I mean, this is not fair comparison, because it's really good. And I don't want to, like, damn it if you don't like the Twilight Zone, but to me there's just some Twilight Zone-ish stuff going on there, and I'm instantly at home. And also, last thing about this from Jason, if you listen to our Halloween episode, he did a reading of, what was the name of it? It was
you're gonna put me on the spot. Which one did I read?
It was with the train.
Remembering Train Car 6.
Remembering Train Car 6. So
isn't it funny that I almost forgot the title, Remembering Train Car 6? And the entire story is about remembering things that you've done in the past to help yourself in the future. Yeah. Well, we're all getting up there, and not as sharp as I used to be. Speaking of forgetting things, I think I misspoke. There's 9 released books in Dovetail Cove.
Yes,
9, and the 10th is the one that we're kind of pushing forward with.
Right. And you go to thefarthestreaches.com, and if you go to the section marked if you novels and collections, how wise is that? And you scroll down, and you can get a look at a fairly nice thumbnail of all these beautiful covers. Incredibly done. There's a very talented cover artist who did all these. He did a really great job on that too. So,
oh, thank you, sir.
All right. He's getting embarrassed. All right, here we go. Jason, the year. I think that first things first, I think we're going to be doing a lot of self-recrimination, at least for myself, on this, because as writers, we've been spoiled with time because of lockdown or economic issues, weather, whatever it might be, or all of those things. And I'm just going to say it, and this is going to get some boos and hisses, I think, from a few people who have been waiting. The John Pilot book did not materialize. I, going in, thought I will finish this last John Pilot book and get this out by the end of the year. And I'm so lucky to have all this time. My focus, due to all these things, plus some very pressing issues with my day job, my business that just frankly cratered, I couldn't focus worth a crap, and I'm making an excuse, but there it is. How about you? How did you fare?
Well, with personal struggles and the health of people around me, it was already going to be a tough year. I mean, 2019 was bad. Went into 2020 thinking it can't get much worse, and then of course around February, March it did. And yeah, I was blessed with time, but likewise maybe with you, the income, the day job situation completely tanked and has not recovered. So there was a lot of time and energy spent on that, trying to make that work through a pandemic when honestly nobody was hiring anywhere close to me or anywhere even remote from me to do the kind of work that I do. So that was a big stressor. Homeschooling my kids starting in March for, I think it was 3.5 months for the remainder of the school year. Despite that, I was one of these guys or gals who looked at this and said, you know what, we are going to have some time on our hands if we're at home all the time. So knowing myself, I get more relaxed and I'm less stressed out when I'm working on a project, on a creative project, not necessarily a work project. But so when I'm daily writing, I'm in a way better mood and everybody can feel it. I think everybody can sense it. So I said to myself, I'm going to write this book that I tried to write in 2019 and couldn't for, a bunch of reasons. And, I diligently worked at that and I enjoyed it and I was in a better mood. And when I got to the end of that, I said, I'm going to write a sequel to it. So I've started that. And when I'm writing, so this is basically April, May, June, up to September, I was writing daily, almost daily, which really helped my mood during, this trying thing that everybody's calling lockdown or quarantine, which I think are ridiculous misnomers. But we were all basically, many of us were at home and isolating to a large degree. So call it what you will. But I think my mood was helped by creating something. But when I'm writing, I don't read much. Certainly don't read much fiction when I'm writing, because if I'm spending 2.5 or 3 hours in the morning writing something and then another hour or two in the evening reading something, the next day I might find that the voice of that writer bleeds into my own. So I don't really read a lot of fiction while I'm writing. So in terms of books this year, I reread The Old Man and the Sea this summer, as I do every summer.
Nice.
Each year it becomes more meaningful, I think. And the first time I read it, I think I was 16, and it was a pretty deep one for me. And it's getting deeper. That ocean is getting deeper each year. But I tried to read. This is funny because when I did have time to read, I couldn't concentrate.
Yeah.
You and I have talked about this. I found it very hard to concentrate on anything for very long. So I couldn't even finish Stephen King's book this year, If It Bleeds, which is an anthology. I enjoyed the first novella in it, and then I got to the second one and it fell off, which is crazy for me because for most of my life, I devour his stuff when it comes out. What about you?
Same. I have a Kindle literally, not literally, figuratively bursting with new titles that I thought, oh, that was the other thing, Jason. It was like, okay, I have all this time, I can write and I can read.
Yep.
I've had what somebody else has coined the term, you've heard of writer's block. I've had reader's block to a large degree. I have been working through a very large, great book that there's 3 things I wanted to just mention today on the show that I've been reading. One of them is a 600+ page tome nonfiction called The Hardest Job in the World, The American Presidency by John Dickerson, who is one of the hosts of 60 Minutes here in America. I follow John on Twitter. Last time I looked, he actually followed me back, which is crazy because he's got 1 million followers. He probably knows I'm sycophantic, but I absolutely love the book. Particularly The Age of Trump, it has been very enlightening for me to reframe what the presidency of the United States is and should be. And what I love is that John kind of falls for President Eisenhower, Republican president in the early 50s, who today would have seemed like a liberal Republican, if there is such a thing anymore, which there's not. But his whole thrust was character is really integrity. And as you read the book, you get into appreciation for Ike. And Ike also had this cool oh shoot, I've posted this before, I forget what it's called. It's a productivity square. And as president, somebody like early on in his presidency, somebody walked in and handed him something. He says, whoa, what is this? Has this been vetted by my staff? He says, don't waste, this wasn't arrogant. This was just, don't waste the president's time with something unless it's a presidential level decision. And it's just a great way to delegate. So there's lots of fun stuff in there. I'm going to write a very extensive review soon. I want to get it finished, and I want to go back to some places I've noted. So
Ike didn't waste time on Twitter, for example.
Twitter was not his bag.
Yeah.
But he does have a great Twitter avatar. It's just 5 stars because he was a 5-star general. It's really cool. But John Dickerson, who, by the way, if you're listening, you are my dream guest if I can ever get to interview you. But John Dickerson having an hour of his time for a lowly podcaster like me is probably out of range. And I'm not going to ask him, at least not now. But
respect to John Dickerson, Alex, but I'm sitting right here.
I've already got you. Remember?
No.
You've been on.
You got me a long time ago, but yeah.
You did. You were like our what is it called? Our returning champion. I think you've been on the show.
I think I've been on more than most. Yeah.
In the past 5 years.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's one book.
Yeah.
There's the other one that it's also nonfiction because I'm kind of like you. I was trying to keep out of the fiction because the other one is The Biggest Bluff, How I Learned to Pay Attention, Master Myself, and Win by Maria Konnikova. And it's a book about how she decided, she's a psychologist, I believe, or a professor of psychology. She decided she was going to learn poker. And she was going, so it's her whole journey of learning poker. And she was following a story about poker players and wound up becoming a story herself because she goes on, spoiler alert, but you find this out. She starts winning tournaments. But she was doing this just to learn about the psychology of poker and the people who play it and all this stuff. So she's written a couple of other great books. One was, I forget the title, but it's How to Think Like Sherlock Holmes. But these are books that help you, I think, that talk about not only your native intelligence, but also developing your emotional intelligence, which is a huge thing for me. I'm a bright guy, but I'm not super smart, but I've been told, and I believe it's true, I'm fairly emotionally intelligent. So I'm really interested to read stuff like that kind of helps me sharpen, not for advantage or gain, but helps me sharpen how I interact with other people. And of course, as you know, my day job being in public relations, that's about interacting with people and creating messaging that works. So there'll be links in the show notes, folks, to all these books, Maria Konnikova, The Biggest Bluff. And I'm going to go ahead and put a link to the King book, if you recommend it.
Sure, yeah. And the other stuff that I read this year was also nonfiction. I of course have former President Obama's book waiting on my e-reader. I haven't started it yet, but I really want to read that. It's a long book. Watching him do all of his interviews, he's getting ragged on by the hosts for how long it is. And apparently it's book 1 of 2. Like he intends to write a second and is working on it. But I enjoyed Jim Carrey's book this year, Memoirs of Misinformation. It was weird, so weird, but you wouldn't expect anything less from Jim Carrey. He's gotten weirder with time, and his book is it's nonfiction mixed with fiction, and you just don't know which pieces really happened. And just as you think, oh, this sounds like it really happened, he really did have this conversation with this other actor, while they were smoking pot, and then something, a spaceship lands or something. Like it's just a crazy ride, and it was a blast. And then people familiar with Ben Folds, the music of Ben Folds, I read, It's a couple years old now, but I read it this year, A Dream About Lightning Bugs, where he talks about his career and music in general, and it's a fabulous read. If people want to check that one out, I enjoyed it.
Oh wow, I love how eclectic your list is, man.
Well, likewise, yeah.
Well, and there's one other one. Now I will tell you this. And of course I've already gushed about how your books too and your stories, which I really mean that effusive praise, folks. And I know it sounds like I'm pouring syrup on him, but I mean it's true. But
I'm so sticky over here, Alex.
It's so sticky. Stop it, dude. But no, that's what she said. Let's
not go there, but
there is a delightful couple of books I got last Christmas by the unfortunately deceased Jim Harrison, and it was a writer about food, but not just about food and gourmet food, but about life. And he's also the writer of the Legends of the Fall, and he wrote all sorts of great books. In fact, but what I really enjoy are his articles about food and about life and death. And the one I would recommend is A Really Big Lunch, Meditations on Food and Life from the Roving Gourmand. It came out in 2017, but I have two other compilations of magazine articles he wrote for Esquire, GQ, Playboy, stuff like that. I read those one at a time and I savor them. And often anybody follows me on social, occasionally you'll usually see me outside. There'll be like a drink and a book or something. And very, very often that book is a Jim Harrison book, because when I need to get away, I go there. Unfortunately, since I've gained like 20 pounds during lockdown, every time I read his books, though, I'm like, I should be that way. I'll just drink the wine and eat all the food and fitness be damned. And then I remind myself, yeah, he died like at 72 or something. You don't want to die that young. So let's be careful. I
think maybe you and I have done a bit too much of that in 2020, is drinking the wine and eating all the food. And isn't it great about, you mentioned Harrison and his books and how you savor them, and some of them you're rereading or discovering a little bit later. Isn't that the great thing about books, is that you can come by an author, or you can come by a book years and years later. I mean, there's so many classics we could list. This summer, I almost forgot to mention, I discovered a modern classic called Pilot's Cross, which while I've read all of the Alex Greenwood books, I did not read that one. Which
I talked you out of it.
you did talk me out of it. And so I never picked it up. Well, actually, no, I did buy it. And it was sitting for a long time. And I finally decided I'm going to ignore your advice and read it. And it was a delightful introduction to this character that is so beloved by all of your readers. And it's funny. It's like for me, it was like a prequel, because I started with the subsequent books and I already felt like I knew him. But to go back and see the kind of the building blocks of his world, and it was a bit different than I expected. The character was a bit different than I expected him to be, and so
a little shaky, wasn't he? He was a little shaky in that first book. Is that what you're thinking?
I think you could describe his personality and his traits as shaky a lot of the time. But so in that way, I think it was consistent. But it was like seeing a prequel version of a character that you really appreciate and admire. Despite his flaws, he's a flawed character, and I think you make no bones about it. That's one of the interesting things, I think, to read about John Pilot, and probably to write about John Pilot, is he's a flawed everyman.
He really is. And thank you. And that's, can I borrow that? I'm getting that and call it like maybe the origin story. I mean, that's kind of what we're talking about here, really, because
you can take anything I've written or said, you can do whatever you want with it.
Hey, man. Okay. You heard it here first. No, I appreciate that. But I think that's a great point, is to maybe introduce it as the origin story is a way to put it, because often people have, and we've been through this before, I won't beat it to death, but I've learned to stop down mouthing my own work, because I think I'm sensitive about the first book because it's the first book I ever wrote. And I just, despite several rewrites, I just feel, I feel like, well, what if it's not good enough? And then they won't even think to look at the other 7 that are after it. And thank you for dispelling that myth. I mean, there's always going to be people who are going to be like, yeah, it's not for me. And that's okay.
Yeah.
That's the thing we both know as writers.
Yeah. And I think at this point, what are you, 8? How many titles?
I'm working on the 8th book.
On the 8th. Yeah. So, I mean, that goes back a decade of publication. And for you writing it, it's probably close to 15 years, if not longer. Not to say that the first book was dated by any stretch, but there is a passage of time through these books. And if somebody comes in now and starts with, 5th or 6th book, which they totally could do, they could come in anywhere on the John Pilot books and get a complete story. But going back and getting that origin is fabulous. But you do have to take it with a bit of a grain of salt, because the world was different when you wrote it. Yeah. And the world that John Pilot inhabits and Kate and the others it was of that time to a degree. Yeah. And we've discussed this too. We're not going to go back and rewrite some of those 15-year-old things, but there's still, the voice is still good. It's still relevant, and what he's going through is still relevant. So yeah, I won't go on too much about that, but it was a great summer read for me.
Most kind of you to mention that. And I appreciate that. And I hope people. There'll be a link in the show notes. I'd like that very much. Actually, and as we record this, a very minor renaissance with that book seems to be going on. I've had some drought in sales, but all of a sudden it's picking up a little bit. So
Must be that new cover.
I reskinned. I hired incredible graphic artist and designer.
I'm so terrible to fish like that, hey?
You really are, but you are a great graphic artist and cover designer. So I have to mention that we reskinned the whole series. And Jason is my exclusive cover artist. My first 3 needed reskinning, and then he's done every book subsequent. And the only one which I love, but I think we'll have to talk offline. Pilot's Key. I'm going to have to add like a beach towel over her derriere because Amazon won't let me do certain promotions for it because it apparently is objectionable. And I'm like, there is nothing objectionable about that. But is there a way we could digitally put a beach towel over her
We can
derriere?
do something. Yeah.
We're gonna have to play with that. But folks, that's good because if you've got the paperback, it's going to be a collector's item because apparently I need to. But this was not on Jason. I said I want it to be sexy. I want a beautiful woman. I want mystery. I want the whole thing. And he gives it to me, and I'm like, yeah. And the book continued to continue to sell well. But the issue is, even though Amazon will sell it, if I want to do a promotion with it, sometimes it gets caught because she's wearing basically a string bikini. Really, I mean,
I think so. I'm not even sure that, from the angle, I'm not even sure that the string bikini is actually there, to be honest.
Maybe I just tell myself it is. But anyway, if you're not familiar with that, I'll even put a link to that one in the show notes. You can go look for yourself. But yeah, Jason, I gotta hire you for. It's nothing against your work because it's incredibly good. It's just I want to make some sales.
Hey folks, we're going to take a quick break in the episode. I probably mentioned here and there that I have another podcast called PR After Hours. PR After Hours is basically an after-hours virtual lounge where public relations, marketing, and general business professionals get together and have a laid-back conversation about what they do and how we can help each other. It's great tips if you're running a business or if you're part of a PR or marketing team or you own your own business. I guarantee you'll learn a lot of stuff. It's a twice weekly show. We've been doing it for a year now. Very proud of it, and you can get it right here on Anchor FM or pretty much wherever you get quality podcasts. But if you want to learn more information about PR After Hours, please visit prafterhours.com. I hope you'll check it out. It's a little bit different vibe, obviously, than Mysterious Goings On, but also I think if you're not careful, you might learn something and have a laugh or two as well. Thanks so much. Again, that's PR After Hours on Anchor FM.
Hey, let me ask you though. I'll lead here real quick if that's okay. Music-wise, very little new music except for the new Bob Dylan album and the new Killers album. That's the only new music I really got into so far this year. And then I just buried my snout in other old music, a lot of jazz, and I'm talking old stuff too, like 1920s stuff. I'm finding a lot of old recordings that I'm really enjoying. And then I went through a few weeks where I was listening to Sean Colvin and Lyle Lovett over and over. So I think I went home to comfort. And even though Bob Dylan's album was new, it's Bob Dylan. And then the Killers, they've been around for a while, and it's a good album. So what about you? What have you been listening to?
I too went to the comfort of Bob Dylan's voice and lyrics. I listened to his new record, Rough and Rowdy Ways, quite a bit this year. For me, going back to kind of comfort stuff, I liked the Killers album because that was kind of my early 20s when they had their heyday. I didn't think the new album was quite as on the level of those first two of theirs, but I still found comfort in having them, bring out the new album this year. For me, Doves, a band called Doves, The Universal Want, is a fabulous record this year. They were big and around the same time for me as the Killers in my 20s. And Fleet Foxes, a little bit later, my late 20s and early 30s, Fleet Foxes were big for me, and they had a fabulous new album called Shore this year. Phoebe Bridgers put out a great pop album called Punisher, and I don't mean to belittle it by calling it pop. It's just it's really more powerful than simply pop. And then My bugaboo this year that you questioned a little bit maybe is I loved Taylor Swift's 2 new albums. She dropped 2 surprise albums that she wrote and recorded with a couple of my favorites. Justin Vernon of Bon Iver wrote a lot of that and performed on the first album and the second album. Aaron Dessner and Matt Berninger of The National. I love The National. And the 3 of them and another co-writer wrote these 2 really, really powerful folk pop albums with, I thought, some of the best lyrics of the year. I'm still kind of consuming the second one because as of recording this, I think it came out a week ago. So, but I really like it upon the first, 10 listens. I've probably listened to it 10 times already in a week. That's how much I like it. And this is a guy, you know my writing, me. I have a pretty light personality, but I really like some of the darker, more serious things. I like, I like The National. I like Bob Dylan. I like serious, kind of heavier stuff more than light pop. The only reason I kind of discovered Taylor Swift is because I have a 10-year-old daughter. Last year at this time, Taylor Swift put out what I was kind of hesitant to even listen to, but you're in the car with your 9-year-old, 10-year-old daughter, and she's like, put on the new Taylor Swift, and you do, and you discover you kind of like it. And at first you're like, I'm a 40-something-year-old man. Am I Taylor Swift's demographic? No, I am not. But you start to like it. And then you discover she's put out a surprise album, and you have all this respect that she got down to work with these incredible songwriters, her included. And the result is 2 full albums of really solid music. So yeah, much respect to Taylor Swift and her crew for putting that out.
I will listen. I first heard of her. Honest to goodness, I've said this before. I could. This is how old I guess I've become. Is I couldn't tell you the name of a song she's done.
I couldn't either, Alex, at all. Like I was not in her world.
Yeah, but I first heard about her. Really, this was about 5 years ago. At the time he was 70, my father-in-law was talking about her, and I was like, and he likes folk. I mean, he's, he's, and I just was like, my goodness, man, what are you doing? Are you trying to seem relevant to your new granddaughter a little bit more? What's going on here? Even though 5 years ago she wasn't really listening to music, unless it was on, Disney or whatever. But so I'm going to take this to heart. Out of the 2, which one should I listen to?
Start with Folklore. That's the second one is Evermore that just came out, and it's I think they'll probably stand together, historically. And I say this not with my tongue in my cheek. I actually think it's her 2 albums, certainly the first one, because it came out in, I think, June or July. So people have had more time to listen to it. I think music critics are going to have her album on their top 10 lists this year. I just think it's going to happen. But that's not to say, go ahead and give it a listen, but that's not to say anyone has to like something because it's popular or because it's critically acclaimed. I'm the last person that says somebody needs to like a certain book, a certain movie because it's highbrow or whatever. Everybody should like what they like and listen to what they listen to. And
totally agree. But you know what? There is putting on blinders, and then when you have people you trust and respect their taste says something, you should listen. I think.
I agree. I agree. And just going back to Bob Dylan for a second, I probably don't sit and listen to an entire Bob Dylan record at a time. I probably listen to a third of it, 3 or 4 songs of it, and then come back to it. He's fabulous, but I can't listen to certain artists for, an hour and 5 minutes straight. Yeah. And when I listen, here's the thing about me too. When I listen to music with lyrics, pop music, whatever you want to call it, I listen to it. I'm not doing anything else. Yeah. I don't put on a Bob Dylan record and sit and surf the web or something like that. That's what I'm doing, is I'm listening to that album. Yeah. Which is pretty unusual, I think, for most.
I don't think people, especially the age where, back in the day when you put on an album, vinyl, I think people did that more. It seems like we got to, I'll pour out a drink. Like when the whole Bob Dylan album came, and I'd heard, Murder Most Foul, but then when I poured out a nice little, it wasn't his bourbon, although I have a bottle of that I've never opened. I got it for Christmas 2 years ago, and I vowed I'm going to open it this year because life's too short. And I pour out a little bit of bourbon, and I put my earphones on, and I just listened, and I just loved it. Yeah, I couldn't listen to Bob all day long. I'm with you on that. And my attention span's changed a little bit, but I will listen to Folklore. I definitely will. I was going to say, by the way, as we're talking about music, and I know we need to
kind of move along. But I recommend Birth of the Cool by Miles Davis. Everybody's like, oh, Miles
Nice.
Davis. Everybody, if you want to sound like you're smart and jazzy, you know. But that Milestones by Charlie Parker. I also picked up New Faces, which is a pretty interesting album by Gil Miret, who passed away a few years ago. He's a great jazz artist. But when I was mentioning earlier, some of the really old stuff like Frankie Trumbauer and his orchestra versus Johnny Mercer and the Nightcaps. I mean, there's just all these great things here. And as I mentioned, Sean Colvin. But I was going to say one last thing. I also, and I'm not going to say that it's the greatest album I ever heard, but there is a new album by an artist who unfortunately took his life a few years ago, Chris Cornell.
Oh yeah.
And, he was lead singer of Soundgarden, wasn't he?
Soundgarden, that's right. Yeah. I was a huge Soundgarden fan. And then his solo stuff afterwards, yeah.
He had this incredible range,
yeah,
his voice. And well, there's an album, it's called No One Sings Like You Anymore, Volume 1. And there'll be a link in the show notes. And he's covering, you might have heard the cover they've done of Patience and Nothing Compares to You already if you're listening to the radio, but he's got Jump Into the Fire, which is a cover of the great Harry Nilsson classic, which if you've seen, what was it? Wise Guys, or is that what they? Yeah, you've seen that. But anyway, you heard that. That one's one that I recommend as well. I like it because there's just something about his voice. And he did the theme to Casino Royale song back in the day. You Know My Name. You know so. That's
Isn't it funny how we consistently, you and I both independently but consistently went back in time this year in a lot of our music, either artists that we experienced 20 years ago or 30 years ago, and they put out a new album and we went back to them, or albums that are, older and we went back to. That's interesting to me.
I think we're seeking comfort, and I think the stuff from the 20s and 30s that I've been listening to.
Yeah, and that's all good stuff too.
It is. And part of it's from Theme Time Radio Hour with Bob Dylan. If you get that podcast, it's free. Go get it. It is a master class. There's dozens of episodes, and every episode's a theme. It's a master class in music. You should just listen. And Bob is funny on it and corny. And
didn't he put out a new episode this year? I haven't listened to that one yet.
On whiskey, and it's right out there, and it's, of course, he has whiskey. That's part of the reason, because they talk about his whiskey, but he's like, I'm not going to pull your coat too much about my whiskey, but then he talks about it. It's a treat. It's a master class. So but anyway, I think you're right, but I think the old stuff, the 20s, just a simpler time, a more innocent time, when in actuality, the time that was recorded, they came off a very bad pandemic.
Right.
And don't you think I think you and I have talked about this offline. Yeah, we are in store for a new Roaring 20s once things get better.
I agree with you. I think and you don't necessarily disagree with this, but I think I clarified my thought is that it won't be 2021. It'll be 2022, maybe 2023. Because I don't think we're out of the woods yet. And I hate to sound alarm bells or be pessimistic. Just realistically looking at numbers, looking at how fast vaccine is rolling out, not to belabor pandemic talk in this episode, but I think things are going to go slower than people expect. So I think, I do think the economy, I think entertainment, those industries are going to have this boom in about 2.5-3 years. It's going to start, and who knows how long it'll last. And I think that'll be good. I think that, the economy is going to need a kick in the butt, or 20 of them.
Yeah, I think it's more likely the latter half of the 20s, but I think you're totally right. I don't want to get over my skis too much on irrational exuberance, but I mean, I just think it's going to get darker, and I think by May, barring any other strange tragedy we're not prepared for, or any black swan event we're not ready for, I think at least every day will get better, and that's my thinking. That's how I choose to believe. I'm not even a super optimist, but you know what? I am feeling better about that. As we close out, though, we should talk about the visual medium. There's film and TV. I'll start real quick. Of course, everything I didn't go. The last movie I saw in the theater was 1917, which seems like the last time I saw a movie was actually in 1917.
I think that might have been the last one I saw in the theater too. And
Wow.
it does feel that long ago.
Yeah, I have a dear friend who's an executive with AMC. He's a neighbor. I should clarify that we're neighbors. He's not a dear friend. He's a dear neighbor, but he's an executive there, and I just feel very bad. AMC movie theaters is the big chain. They're, I mean, this is not anything he's told me, obviously, but I mean, you can read the papers. It's scary. So I hope that they can hang on and we can do that. But 1917, that was the one. But I've watched some stuff, and I won't list every little thing. I will say this: I have watched a lot of comfort food that's on there, a lot of old. Listen, since I was a little boy, if I've been down or whatever, I go right into the arms of Star Trek. Even the new show, Discovery, which season 3, dumb as it is in a lot of ways, is better than the first 2 seasons, in my opinion. But I won't get off on Star Trek because I'm a real snob about Trek. But I will say this: I'll just name a couple of quick things that I've watched and really enjoyed. And I had to kind of rack my brain because, like last year, I was like, we're like, what do we like? What did we like early in the year? You know, all that stuff.
Yep.
But I really love The Queen's Gambit. Have you seen it yet?
I haven't. It's on my list of stuff that I need to. My wife watched it, and I would peek in. You know, I'd move through the room that she was watching it in, and I'm like, this looks fabulous, and it's nothing like what I thought it was. Of course, I knew that The Queen's Gambit is a chess move, but it didn't register when she was watching it. I was like, is this actually about the Queen? Because of course, what's it called? The
Crown.
The Crown is huge this year. I haven't seen that yet either. She's also watched that one. So those two are on my list. But like you, I have not seen anything in a theater in a year or longer. And everything's been consumed at home on, you know, pretty decent TV set and whatnot, good sound. But I went for comfort too. So I loved The Mandalorian this last month.
I haven't caught up. I haven't seen season 2 yet.
Yeah, I know. And I won't ruin anything for anybody, but it still feels more like the classic Star Wars of the original trilogy than I think anything else that Disney has put out in the Star Wars world. The Good Place, I watched the 4th and final season in January when it came out. I love that whole run of that show. I don't know if you've seen it. It's NBC, so it was nice and clean, and the kids even watched it and got, you know, a little bit out of it. That was a really good show. Sad to see it go, but what an ending. Fabulous.
I love her. She's I think a delight.
Oh, Kristen Bell.
Yeah.
She is. I think she's probably fabulous in real life, but she's fabulous in everything she does. Raised by Wolves was a good first season. A couple things that I didn't see that I want to. The Boys season 1 last year was fabulous, but I haven't seen season 2 yet. Better Call Saul is a great show. Still haven't seen this year's season. I think they're on 4 or 5. I can't remember what season they're on.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. But you go ahead. Those are the kind of the ones that I earmarked or saw and really liked.
I think, and I'm with you. I think you and I both should trust our wives more. Now, my wife and daughter are watching an old TV series based on an old film, Parenthood. The show's not even on anymore. But my daughter's, I don't know. I thought it was a little grown up for her, but she's fine with it. She's 12 and that's fine.
Yeah.
You know, but they are enjoying that. I'm not into that. I'm watching a lot of cooking shows. I'm watching a lot of barbecue competition shows because I really want to create a barbecue competition team down the road. But there's one other show that I'm in the middle of. I've not finished. It's on HBO. It's The Flight Attendant.
I want to see that. That's is that with Kaylee
Cuoco?
Yeah. Yeah, I do want to see that one.
I mean, I've only seen half of it.
Yeah.
But it's a delight. It is. I'm loving it. Let's put it that way.
And I think is The Flight Attendant, is it a limited series, like it has an ending, or is it on
It's based on a novel, so I think it is.
Okay. You know, to be honest, in a year like 2020, there's a huge appeal to me to something that's eight episodes and done, or 12 episodes and done. Because you know, life is short and life is precious. We've been gifted a lot of time this year, but still, the commitment to something that may run 6 or 8 years, I don't know. I don't know if I'm ready for that.
I think you and I've talked about this offline before. It's, as I get older, I have probably less time ahead than behind, and I think I did talk about this last year on the show, even if I'm watching something, I'll give it a fair amount of time. But if it's not clicking with me, doesn't mean it's bad. But if it's not clicking with me, I'm not going to keep watching it.
Yeah. And that was me with Star Trek Discovery. I tried the first season. I watched the first 3 or 4 episodes, and you and I have talked about this too. Is it's not everybody's cup of tea, and especially that first season didn't. You felt like you slogged through that first season. Yeah. So I tried it twice, and then I was like, you know what? Life's too short. I don't think this one grabbed me. I might jump in at the current season because you've said that it's quite a bit better.
They just real quick. What they did though, they made it where they're no longer much screwing with canon, and they took the show where I wish they'd just done it this way from the beginning, and I could have been like, okay, I don't love it. There's some parts that are dumb. It's incredibly politically correct in my opinion, which I'm just over. Sorry, old middle-aged white man talking. But anyway, it's a more enjoyable show. What I am excited about is since you didn't really watch much deeper, is they're going to do a spinoff for Captain Pike down the road.
I think I saw that. Yeah. That one interests me.
He's very appealing. Very appealing actor. So there's so much more we could talk about on movies and TV, but I'll tell you what I'm looking forward to. And I don't know, maybe it'll be in a theater down the road. I want to see the new James Bond when it comes finally out, but they keep kicking that can down the road.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Just like they did with Wonder Woman 1984, which is another one that I want to see because I really like the first one a lot.
Me too. Movies this year.
Not a lot. The attention span to sit and watch a 90-minute or 120-minute movie. The stuff I have watched, I break it into chunks. I watched the first half one evening and then the second half the next evening. But I liked Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always, which is a mouthful to say. Fabulous movie. First Cow was a great one this year, and one with
First Cow.
Cow. Yeah, just check it out. Evan Rachel Wood and one of my favorites, Richard Jenkins.
Oh yeah. Oh, I like.
We're in a movie called Kajillionaire. I don't know if you saw that one. A little movie, quirky thing, just awesome. I'm going to give an honorable mention to I'm Thinking of Ending Things with Charlie Kaufman directing. It's based on a Ian Reid novel. Ian Reid's a moderately well-known Canadian author. He hasn't written much, but he wrote this really, really odd book about relationships. And it was turned into a really quirky but excellent movie called I'm Thinking of Ending Things. And then, of course, this year I rewatched The Godfather 1 and The Godfather Part 2.
How can you not? Are you going to watch the new cut of 3?
I've never seen Part 3.
Oh.
Head explosion. No, I've been told don't bother with 3, and I just never did. But now that there's a recut, I might start with it.
Yeah, I hear it's really more lengthy now, but the critical issue with it, sorry, I mean, if you haven't heard this before, but the critical issue, unfortunately, because I think she's a very talented director, is Sofia Coppola's character, the way it was written and acted, is not great. There's that, and there's a couple other things. Robert Duvall's not in it because they wouldn't pay him his rate, which is ridiculous. There's some other stuff, but I think if you love 1 and 2, I think you owe it to yourself to watch 3. I don't know which one you watch first, if either or the new cut or the old. I would probably watch the new cut and just see what you think. When I mention cooking shows, I should remind everybody, this is based on a TV show, Jon Favreau's The Chef Show. Jon Favreau, who does The Mandalorian. Have you watched The Chef Show?
I have not watched The Chef Show, but I watched, isn't it the movie called The Chef?
Called Chef, yeah.
Or just Chef. Okay, yeah. Which was fabulous. So he's got a reality show called The Chef Show?
Yeah, it's him and Roy, who was the producer and a chef who behind the scenes. They get it's some of their celebrity friends together, and they go cook food, and it's entertaining, it's fun. Favreau is very winning.
Is there nothing Favreau cannot do?
I love that guy.
Man, he's so good, and he's funny too. Like he's
super funny.
He
doesn't strike me as being a Hollywood a-hole. He seems like a pretty nice, decent guy.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but he seems very cool. We're running long as usual. Any podcasts come to mind besides Mysterious Goings On that you are listening to?
Mysterious Goings On is the only podcast I listen to.
Okay, I'll send you that money for that first.
I'm dead serious about that. I know that I've been on your podcast a number of times over the last 3-4 years. Mm-hmm. And I love it every time, but listening to podcasts is not my format. I don't know what it is. It's yours is the one that I listen to.
Well, I
And
appreciate
I
that.
love it.
Well,
I love it.
well,
If it's representative of podcasts in general, then there's some
no,
great stuff out there. But
yeah, they're way better. Trust, there are some way. Now, there's a lot of crap out there, but I'll just and thank you. I was listening to a lot of political stuff, obviously throughout the political campaign, like Battleground and Stay Tuned with Preet and Hacks on Tap and Politics War Room and the Bulwark. Anyway, I'm going to cut back on that stuff. I'm a political junkie to a large degree, but I was just more trying to just keep up with what the Pulse of the Nation was doing. But a great one I want to recommend is The Gist with Mike Pesca. Wonderful. It's daily. It's 5 days a week. He's wonderful. He's funny. He loves words. He's cheerful. He's a little glib at times, but I think he's great. The New Abnormal is really a good one to check out too. And if you're into horror, Postmortem with Mick Garris, who has directed a lot of the Stephen King, Garris, right?
Yeah.
He runs Postmortem with Mick Garris is a fun show. He'll do interviews with other horror directors and writers, but he'll also do what he calls the fun size. And then it's just, he answers fan questions for like 20 minutes on an episode, which are a hoot. He and Joe Russo, who is his producer, who also just produced a Bruce Willis film and wrote. So that's interesting. But there's
Joe
a lot
Russo
of
of the brothers Russo.
No. And that's a funny joke. He's always like, no, I'm not that.
Oh,
Russo,
okay.
But,
yeah. Well, it's a fairly common name, I guess.
It is. And if you like MASH like I do, MASH Matters is a great one. And of course, there's so many best movies never made. If you're a trekker, Inglorious Trexperts, a great thing by the people who do Inglorious Trexperts, by the way, which is really not just about Star Trek. It's about sci-fi and pop culture. And they're my age, so they just speak my language. But another one they do is called the 4:30 Movie Podcast. This was apparently an East Coast thing where at 4:30 they would show, and they'd have theme weeks for movies. So what these guys did, and they grew up on that. So what these guys did is there's four dudes. They come on. They're all in Hollywood. They're all writers or production people in Hollywood. So they get on there and they know a lot about movies. And they do theme weeks for each guy. Like one guy does Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Everybody, and then they all agree on a Friday, and they create a theme week. It's just fun. It's if you just want something while you're walking or working out that's a little different, it's a hoot. So those are some that I like to listen to. Don't forget, I have a business one called PR After Hours, linked in the show notes usually every time, and that one's really taken off for me. And I would be remiss, Jason, I'm sorry to do this. I just want to say this. It's the end of the year. I was trying to keep this under an hour. I failed, but I wanted to make sure.
Just edit my parts out.
Oh my God. Yeah, right. Edit my parts out. I love it. I just wanted to mention, we've had a banner year with some wonderful authors. And I mean, we started in January last year with Set the Controls for the Heart of Sharon Tate by Gary Lippman. He kicked it off, and then it just snowballed. And we had a lot of other guests who weren't necessarily writing books. But then we kind of cruised along. My old friend Zoof showed up doing a Star Trek one. He's coming back to the show, by the way, to talk about, he reread everything Stephen King has written. And we're going to do an episode about that coming up. But then I had probably one of my all-time favorites after Jason, a conversation with Scottish thriller author Douglas Skelton. And his book, Thunder Bay, and The Blood is Still, the sequel. Great stuff. If you haven't listened to this interview, go to mgopod.com or wherever you get your podcasts. But Douglas Skelton, he is a true gent. He's one of the nicest people I've ever interviewed, and he was a hoot. So I thought that was fun. Robert Lee Hill, who, by the way, Jason did the cover for his book. It was a nice book on what the world needs now, I think. And he was like, the name of the book, I call the interview What the World Needs Now. But the book, he's the author of several books that are helpful. All You Need Is More Love, which was a Caroline Street Press title. And he did a nice interview with Bob, who was a comfort. I mean, he's one of those people, he's a former minister, or he's still a minister, but he was very helpful there. There's several more you can go look, but I had a bestseller, New York Times bestseller, Alessandra Torre came on and talk about her AI for authors. I'm just kind of scrolling through here so I don't forget everybody, but just real quick, you can go to mgopod.com. We had, here we go, I'm caught up. I've got this carousel here. Instead of just writing notes, I thought I'll just scan through here. But I had Adriana Gavazzoni out of Brazil. She's a thriller writer. Bert Weisbord's been on twice. Bert is a former Hollywood producer. He just we did another interview with him a couple of weeks ago. Former Hollywood producer. He's writing this wonderful series. He's got a new trilogy out. It's fantastic. Check the show notes for that. Then we had some nonfiction writers. We also had Aldo Cernuto from Italy. Wrote his first thriller. He was great. I mentioned Alessandra Torri, Amanda Steele, local author of dystopian stuff, who was really, and she was a fun interview too, was Lynette Burrows, and I really enjoyed her. So many more I could talk about. I'm probably missing some people. Please, nobody get your feelings hurt, but we're running long here. But I would be honored if you're like Jason, and this is the only show you listen to, but you might have missed a few, you should go back to mgopod.com or wherever you get your pods and listen to some of this great stuff. And I'll just finish with my latest author interview to, besides Bert and Jason, was The Suffragist Playbook, which is not a novel, but it is a book on using the lessons learned from how the suffragist movement to get women the right to vote in the United States and beyond, using those tactics and strategies to help advance your own cause that you may be passionate about. It was fun for me because it's a cool book, and I'm being in messaging and PR, I thought it was very helpful. But also the authors are, one was the granddaughter, Lucinda Robb, the granddaughter of President Johnson of the United States, and the other was Rebecca Roberts, who is the daughter of Cokie Roberts, which United States news junkies may recall was a very prominent political reporter and host, and just a really interesting lady. So there's a lot going on there. I've had a really blessed year with the show. So I know I've been rattling on here, but I got to say, before I let Jason make his final remarks, it's been probably the most gratifying year. I've had great shows throughout the past 5 years, but this year might have been the most gratifying in that we could give you quality content on a consistent basis, and our audience is growing. We moved our show from one host to another. We're on Anchor FM now, where I can actually make a little bit of money on the show. I'm not talking, dudes, everybody listening, I'm not talking dollars. I'm talking pennies per show, but it's better than nothing. So we're getting there. So there's just a lot going on with the show, and I have every intention of keeping going here in season 6, but we're going to move on in spring to season 7. So, Jason, I'm going to stop talking because all I do is talk. And any last thoughts on the year, and maybe even your thoughts on the year ahead, or any advice, dirty jokes, anything?
Well, the year 2020 must end. We just need to put it in the ground and move on. And surprisingly, there was a lot of great entertainment released and produced in 2020. I think there's going to be a drought in the next year because, television productions and movie productions were shut down for so long. I think there's going to be a gap. And I think you and I, if I'm lucky enough to come back and discuss the year with you in a year's time, I think we're going to be talking about more comfort stuff, comfort content. And just as a side note, it blows my mind that you can listen to so many podcasts and keep up with everything that you do in a month, a week, a year. That list was incredible. And to think that I'm getting all of my American politics from Fox News, that's, I'm doing it wrong. I'm kidding. Alex made a face there. No, I'm kidding.
Actually, I listen to, I've subscribed to about 20 shows, but I take 6 mile hikes, and that's a couple hours. So I can get a lot in there. But I'm finding that I'm switching to less political content, but it's helpful to me. Well, I think you're right about comfort content. I think you're right. There will be a bit of a drought because shows, we're seeing the ends of the shows that actually film prior to, where people are having to wear a mask everywhere. It's timely today because Tom Cruise, there was a audio leak because he tore into some crew members who apparently were not taking precautions, pandemic precautions seriously. And when I first heard that, I thought, oh, Tom Cruise. But then I listened to it and I realized, no, it's not hyperbolic to say that this movie they're filming, Mission Impossible 7, is probably carrying the back of Hollywood on it right now, because he screams to these people, we're the gold standard. And basically, if we F this up, there's other studios who are going to be like, it's not worth it. We can't start a movie, a big blockbuster, and then shut it down because idiots won't wear their mask or their face shield or stand too close together. So that's why he did it. Whether he did it, dramatically and then wanted to make sure it leaked, I don't care. I have to agree with Tom 100%. I don't agree with Tom 100% on anything else. I don't think he's an incredible actor, and I don't like his take on psychiatry. But other than that, I'm really proud of the move he made there. I think it's a smart move.
Yeah, and I actually agree with most of that. And likewise, I think in the late summer to early fall, I think a movie like Tenet, Christopher Nolan's Tenet, was supposed to be, the watermark. Is watermark, is that the right word? I'm not sure. The test film to see if audiences would come back to movie theaters, and they didn't. They really didn't. Finally, was able to see that one. I forgot to mention that one. That one was really.
Is it good?
It was incredible. It's a real mind bender. It's a real mind bender, more so than anything else he's done, from the guy who did Inception and Interstellar. This one's more of a thinker. Anyway, and then I mentioned Wonder Woman 1984. I was looking forward to that one, I think, earlier in the year, and then it got pushed back to fall and then Christmas. It was going to be one of these test movies to see if audiences would come back for the big movies. And you mentioned James Bond, and that one keeps getting pushed back. So I kind of hear Tom Cruise's rant, for lack of a better word, and I kind of agree that he and other big filmmakers, because Tom Cruise is a big filmmaker. He's the star and he's the face, but he's also the producer, and he's driving. And Christopher Nolan and Patty Jenkins and the Bond movie, they're trying desperately to revive their industry in theaters, and only time is going to tell if that's going to work.
I agree. It's people take a lot of things for granted. I think we took independent restaurants for granted in this country, at least, because we've done precious little to help them in the midst of lockdowns. I think we've taken Hollywood for granted, which is so amazing, because I'm so angry with Hollywood for a lot of the things foisted upon us by our entertainment industrial complex, Trump. But I think we're all going to miss a lot, like you said, Jason. Well, you know what? We could keep going. And what's funny, folks, is probably after we stop recording, we'll chat a little bit longer, unless he's got somewhere to be. Actually, I do, but that's just what Jason and I do. And yeah, man, I'll be lucky if you have some time next year to come back on the show. I think that would be great. I think just to take this back around, what did you say earlier? Will there be a release in 2021 from you? Is that what you said?
I can't guarantee it. That's the goal. Okay. But I hate to I hate to be the one to say for sure, and then a pandemic happens and it doesn't happen. So and as we know from as we know from reality, that's the unthinkable is actually thinkable now. So what I am looking forward to, and you asked this question, what I am looking forward to in 2021 is not necessarily hearing about the White House every single day and seeing it on every page that I scroll through, and seeing it on every channel, and seeing it, hearing it all the time. I'm really looking forward to that. If President-elect Biden can pull things together as he's hoping to do and he's aiming to do, one of the things I think he should aim for is that he is less heard from. I expect him to do his job, and you haven't had anyone in that office to do that job for 4 years. So he will do the work, but I don't want to hear about it every day. That's my hope. I want to hear about puppies on the newscast. I want to hear about lost puppies being reunited with their parent puppies, or whatever. I want more human interest. I don't want every day to wake up and say, well, is it World War III yet? Like what?
Yeah. Or at the very least, who has he insulted today?
Sure. Yeah. What did he tweet in the middle of the night? Not to go too political, but I'm hoping for that on my content, not on my content next year.
Yeah. All I want, and I've said this, I want competence in the White House. I want competence in our government. Competence could have saved thousands of lives, but that's another story.
And isn't it sad that that's the bar now, is just basic competence? Not to say that President-elect Biden is just at that bar, but that's now the bar.
Yeah.
It's just basic level competence.
I'd like to get back to like we're being pissed off at our leaders because you just disagree with their policies, not with the fact that, like you said, they're not working. They're just
because he wore a tan suit.
Yeah, yeah.
You remember that?
The great scandal of the tan suit with Obama. See, that's worth it alone. If Obama talks about the tan suit in this book, I've got to read it just for that.
Yeah,
just to see what he says.
Yeah.
It's funny, by the way. I noticed that Biden started wearing tan suits when he was the vice president. After that, I wonder if that was his way of giving an FU to people who are making fun.
He
of that.
should
Anyway.
wear it on Inauguration Day. He should wear a tan suit.
God, wouldn't that be hilarious?
That would be awesome.
Jason McIntyre, my dear friend, great author. Please check the show notes, folks, to get his books, thefarthestreaches.com, for more about him. Be looking for new content from him, and definitely be looking for him to be on the show next year, because I know where he lives. I'll get him back. Thanks so much, Jason.
Thanks so much for having me, as always. It's always a blast.
Thanks so much for listening to Mysterious Goings On. Don't forget, we have a complete archive of all of our interviews, monologues, updates, live readings, dead readings. All of that stuff is available at mgopod.com. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to us so you never miss an episode. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the usual suspects. Please join us there. Again, don't forget, mgopod.com also has links where to find me on social media and how to get in touch in case you want to be a guest here on the show. Well, I think it's time that I move on for this week, but until next time, keep reading.